Let me tell you something, when you go silent after his rejection, he doesn't just hear your absence, he feels it. It wraps around him like a mirror turned inward. He's not haunted by your words, he's haunted by the lack of them. You think he's not noticing? Oh, he's noticing everything. The shift in energy, the missing texts, the vanishing attention. And suddenly your silence becomes louder than anything you've ever said. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to retaliate to reclaim power. Because when a woman knows who she is, when she understands the depth of her worth, she doesn't perform, she withdraws. And that withdrawal, that spiritual stillness, it pierces deeper than any response ever could. This is not a game. This is not revenge. This is awareness. You are not reacting from pain. You are responding from power. Because when someone chooses to reject you, they are revealing where they stand. And when you choose silence, you are revealing where you rise. The shift is spiritual. It's not about making him miss you. It's about you not missing yourself. Trying to be understood by someone who was never qualified to hold your truth. He thought you'd beg, plead, justify, but instead you leaned back into your purpose. That silence, that wasn't weakness, that was you honoring your inner court. That was you refusing to audition for love. That should have recognized you the moment it met you. You see, silence is sacred. It's a discipline. It's a form of reverence for your energy. When you pull back, it's not because you're cold, it's because you've remembered that your peace is not up for negotiation. And that is what's killing him. He's replaying every moment trying to decode your quiet, because men expect explanation, they don't expect evolution. You've evolved. You've exited the performance. You're no longer the echo, you are the voice. Silence is not absence, it is presence intensified. Most people misunderstand silence. They think it's the void left behind when someone stops speaking, stops engaging, or stops explaining. But true silence, the kind born from strength and not fear, is an act of concentrated presence. It is the full weight of your energy without noise. It is a force that speaks without uttering a word. When someone rejects you and you respond with silence, you're not disappearing. You're becoming more visible in a way they didn't expect. Because in a world obsessed with reaction, your non-reaction becomes the loudest signal in the room. Silence is powerful because it forces reflection. Words can be dismissed, debated, or denied, but silence makes a person confront their own thoughts, their own behavior, their own emptiness. Your silence after rejection doesn't mean you've retreated. It means you've reclaimed. It means you've chosen to protect your peace instead of surrendering it to someone who didn't value it. And that presence, the presence of your self-worth, becomes undeniable in your absence. He might not hear your voice anymore, but he feels you. In the spaces where your attention used to live, in the emotional warmth you no longer offer, in the comfort of knowing he could always access you. That's all gone now. And what's left is your intensified presence in silence, a spiritual reminder that not everyone gets to stay, not everyone gets to return. Your energy is no longer distributed, it's focused, it's elevated, and that is what silence truly is, a sharpened form of presence, a still unwavering awareness that doesn't need to announce itself because it simply is. Your emotional detachment is your power. When you no longer feel the need to respond, to react, or to prove your worth to someone who failed to see it, you are stepping into an unshakable kind of strength. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to not abandon your peace for temporary validation. It is the conscious choice to stop being emotionally enslaved by someone else's inconsistency, rejection, or approval. You remove their power over you, not by fighting back, but by no longer needing anything from them at all. Real confidence is quiet. It does not perform, it does not chase closure or validation. It stands grounded in the knowledge that your value was never determined by who walked away. It was revealed by how you rose when they did. Detachment is the decision to no longer allow their actions to dictate your self-worth. It is the moment you stop waiting for them to understand, to regret, to return. Because your healing no longer depends on what they choose to do. Your peace is not on layaway waiting for their apology to activate it. When you emotionally detach, you become immune to their attempts to manipulate, guilt, or test you. They may try to pull you back in, they may act confused, offended, or surprised by your calm, but what they're really feeling is the vacuum created by your self-restraint, by your refusal to give them the reaction they're used to. Your silence becomes unsettling because they no longer control the narrative. You do. Detachment is not coldness, it is emotional discipline. It is what allows you to feel without drowning, to love without losing yourself, to care without collapsing. That is power, and it is rare. When you stop explaining yourself, you shift the balance of control. People often believe that if they just say the right thing, if they explain their side clearly enough, the other person will understand, will see their value, will change their mind. But this mindset is rooted in fear and in a deep desire to be chosen. The truth is, the more you explain, the more power you give away. You hand over your energy in hopes of receiving clarity, closure, or connection, when in reality, your value should never need a defense. When someone rejects you and you respond by going quiet instead of justifying why you were enough, you take back the narrative. You refuse to be put on trial for how you love. You stop showing up to convince someone of your worth, because worth is never proven, it is recognized. And when someone fails to recognize it, your silence says everything their judgment couldn't. This is not about ego, it's about alignment. If they cannot see who you are in your stillness, they were never meant to hold space for you. Silence removes the emotional debris. It reveals who is truly tuned into your spirit and who is only responding to your noise. You shift from chasing connection to commanding presence. You are no longer the petitioner begging to be seen. You become the standard they now realize they lost access to. Explaining yourself keeps you tied to the outcome. It keeps you emotionally entangled in a situation that has already spoken. But silence, that is closure, delivered by self-respect. It shifts the energy because the moment you stop trying to prove anything is the moment they start questioning everything. And in that space, power transfers not through force, but through grace. Your silence confronts his ego where it hurts most, in the absence of your validation. People who rely on external affirmation, especially those who reject you thinking you'll still be available to feed their ego, often underestimate the power of withdrawal. When you fall silent, when you no longer affirm, praise, or chase, something inside them begins to unravel. He may have thought he was in control when he rejected you, but what he truly needed, your attention, your presence, your emotional investment, is now gone, and that void becomes louder than any words ever could. His ego thrived off the certainty that you would still be there, still care, still explain. But when you detach and go quiet, you disrupt that expectation. You deny his ego the comfort it was counting on. The silence becomes a mirror, forcing him to face himself without your reflection, helping him feel significant. He may try to act indifferent. He may pretend your silence doesn't bother him. But inside, the absence of your validation gnaws at the identity he built around being desired, wanted, or pursued. You once made him feel like he mattered. You saw him, affirmed him, and poured energy into his presence. Now that energy has been redirected inward to you, and his ego doesn't know how to function in that absence. The truth is, silence is a form of spiritual discipline. It says, I no longer participate in making you feel whole when you chose to break me. And that confrontation with his own hollowness, his own need for validation, is what begins to sting. Not your words, not your anger, but your stillness. It exposes the truth. He didn't just lose you, he lost the version of himself that felt powerful in your light. And now in your silence, he realizes how much of his confidence was built on your reflection. You do not chase what is not aligned with your value. The moment you realize that not everything or everyone is worthy of your pursuit, you step into a new dimension of power. Alignment is everything. If someone cannot meet you with the same level of integrity, energy, or emotional maturity, then chasing them is not just a loss of time, it's a betrayal of self. Every time you pursue what rejects you, what belittles you, or what remains unsure about you, you dilute your own worth in the name of attachment. But the truth is, what is meant for you will never require you to abandon your value in order to obtain it. When you stop chasing, you make a statement, not to them but to yourself. You declare that your worth is not negotiable. You no longer lower yourself to be seen, heard, or chosen. You choose you, and when you choose yourself, consistently and unapologetically, you begin to attract people and experiences that resonate with the truth of who you are, not the version of you that is begging to be enough. Chasing is rooted in scarcity. It says, I need this person to validate that I am lovable. But standing still in your value says, I already know I am. And if you can't meet me there, you were never for me. This is how emotional freedom is born. Not by winning someone back, but by remembering who you are without their presence. When you walk away from what is not aligned, you don't lose anything, you gain clarity. You protect your peace, you preserve your energy for what is worthy, and that self-respect, that is what elevates you beyond the cycle of rejection. Because once you understand your value, you stop chasing people and start honoring your path. A woman in silence is a woman in control. There is a certain authority in her quiet, a spiritual calm that cannot be manipulated or shaken. When a woman goes silent, not because she's weak, but because she's done performing, her silence becomes her shield, her strategy, and her strength. In that silence, she reclaims every part of herself she once gave away, trying to be understood, accepted, or loved by someone who didn't deserve access to her depth. Control isn't always about speaking up. Sometimes it's about knowing when to say nothing. Because words can be wasted on ears that do not listen and hearts that do not value them. But silence cannot be ignored. It echoes in places no voice can reach. It disrupts the dynamic. It creates uncertainty in those who thought they knew your reactions. It rewrites the story without needing to argue or explain. Silence is where true mastery lives. A woman in control doesn't beg. She doesn't chase. She doesn't try to force clarity from confusion. She knows that her stillness speaks louder than any plea ever could. And when she falls into that silence after rejection, it's not to sulk, it's to reset. It's to protect what remains sacred within her. It's to create space for her energy to realign with her higher self. Because she understands that not everyone who had access to her presence was worthy of her essence. Her silence is her boundary, her silence is her answer, and most importantly, her silence is her rebirth. In that stillness, she becomes untouchable, not because she's closed off, but because she's centered. She no longer reacts from emotion, she responds from awareness. And when a woman reaches that level of control, she no longer fights for respect, she simply commands it. Men expect closure but not composure. They anticipate tears, long texts, questions, emotional breakdowns. They prepare for the chaos that usually follows rejection because it feeds their sense of importance. But when you respond with composure, with grace, with silence, it unravels their assumptions, it disorients them. Because instead of falling apart, you held your ground. Instead of seeking answers, you became the answer. And nothing confronts a man's ego more deeply than a woman who no longer needs to be chosen to feel worthy. Your composure is unsettling because it reveals strength he didn't expect you to have. It shows him that his rejection didn't define you, it refined you. He thought he had the final word, but your calm silence is louder than any explanation you could have given. It's in that quiet strength that he starts to question his choice. Not because you're punishing him, but because he's realizing he misjudged you. He underestimated your capacity to detach, to elevate, to move forward without fanfare or desperation. This is what he didn't prepare for, the version of you that doesn't chase, doesn't break down, and doesn't collapse under the weight of his absence. Your composure is spiritual. It's not cold, it's not bitter, it's aligned. You've learned to release what doesn't honor your worth. You've chosen peace over performance. And now in your silence, he's left with himself. No noise to cover the void, no emotional chaos to distract him. Just the weight of realizing that he walked away from someone who stayed rooted when he expected her to fall apart. Men expect the drama, not the discipline. But when you give him composure instead, you shift the power. Not to hurt him, but to heal yourself. Because grace, not vengeance, is the ultimate closure. Spiritual detachment is not giving up, it's letting go with grace. There's a quiet difference between surrender and release. Giving up implies defeat, but letting go is a conscious act of liberation. It is the moment you decide that your soul is no longer available to be weighed down by what no longer aligns with your purpose. Spiritual detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the inner knowing that peace is more valuable than approval, and that staying connected to someone who brings confusion is more damaging than walking away in silence. When you detach spiritually, you don't deny your emotions. You transcend them. You feel everything, but you're no longer ruled by it. You see the situation for what it is without needing to manipulate, control, or fix it. You stop needing to be right, to be understood, to be chosen, because you understand that true alignment doesn't need force, it flows. And when that flow ends, you don't chase the current. You sit with still waters and wait for the tide that is meant for you. People may think you're unbothered, emotionless, or distant, but they have no idea about the storm you had to calm inside yourself just to arrive at that peace. Detachment isn't about closing your heart, it's about opening your spirit to something greater. It's about trusting that what you release will be replaced by what is meant. It's about choosing elevation over explanation. You don't raise your voice, you don't argue for your worth, you don't plead for recognition, you simply step back. In that silence, that grace becomes your loudest declaration. You're not abandoning love, you're preserving it for where it can be reciprocated. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. It's the sacred act of choosing your soul over your scars. The rejection was his decision, but the silence is your power. He may have walked away thinking he was in control, thinking he had the final say, but what he didn't realize is that true power is not in who ends it, it's in who has the strength to stay silent afterward. Rejection can feel like a storm, sudden and disorienting, but your silence becomes the calm after it. It's not a reaction, it's a response. A sovereign, deliberate response that shifts the entire energy dynamic. You don't need to defend why you were worthy, you don't need to chase down clarity or closure, because when someone chooses to reject you, they reveal their lens, not your value, and your silence says you refuse to entertain a conversation with someone who already made a decision about you without knowing your depth. That's where your power lives. In restraint, in refusal, in stillness. Because silence cannot be manipulated, it cannot be used against you. It leaves no openings for ego games or emotional confusion. It says, I heard you, I accept it, and now I rise. He may have expected hurt feelings, chaos, a broken response. Instead, he's faced with your absence, a presence more powerful than your words ever were. The silence becomes a mirror reflecting his own choice back to him, stripped of justification, and the longer the silence stretches, the more it speaks, not just of your strength, but of your refusal to be defined by someone else's inability to see you clearly. Your power is not in what you say, it's in what you no longer give energy to. And when you choose silence after rejection, you're not playing a game, you're making a declaration. I do not fight to be seen, I walk in the knowing that I always was. He feels your absence not in your words, but in the places where your energy used to live. The attention, the presence, the quiet way you made space for him, all of that is gone now. And it's not just the silence that unsettles him, it's the emptiness where your spirit once resided. You didn't just stop speaking, you removed the invisible support he was relying on without realizing it. The daily comfort of your messages, the softness in your voice, the way you cared even when he didn't show he needed it. He feels that absence like a shadow that no longer follows him. He may try to pretend it doesn't affect him, he may act indifferent, but the human spirit notices when it's no longer being held. He feels the void when no one checks in, when no one celebrates his wins, when no one catches the small shifts in his mood. That space you once filled with care, intuition, and emotional generosity is now echoing, and it doesn't matter how much noise he surrounds himself with, he will feel the silence you left behind. This is the unseen cost of rejection. People think walking away means they are discarding something small, but they don't understand the immensity of what they are letting go of until the quiet reveals it. Your presence was soft, but it was foundational. He took it for granted because it felt so steady, so consistent. But now that it's no longer there, he feels the imbalance. Your silence speaks to the sacredness of what you offered, and when something sacred leaves, it leaves a spiritual imprint. He feels your absence, not because you reminded him, but because the energy you gave can't be replicated, it can only be missed, and that's what he's left with. Now, echoes of a woman who no longer fills the space he assumed would always be his. Let your silence be your sanctuary, not your sentence. You are not voiceless, you are powerful beyond words. You are not forgotten, you are unforgettable in your absence. The strength to walk away without a war, to detach without destruction, to choose stillness over suffering, that is not weakness, that is mastery. You no longer seek to be understood by someone who chose not to understand you. You no longer pour your essence into hands that couldn't hold it. He may feel your silence as rejection, but it's not. It's redirection. Back to yourself, back to your wholeness, back to the divine truth that you never needed to prove your worth to be worthy. So let the silence stretch. Let it speak what your lips no longer will. Because in that silence, you're not just healing, you're ascending. You're no longer reacting to the pain, you're responding to your power. You are the peace he didn't value. You are the presence he thought would stay forever. And now in your absence, he meets the consequence of your growth. Let him feel it. Let him face it. Not out of revenge, but out of reverence for the woman you've become in the sacred quiet he never expected.